Protest deemed a riot in Seattle. It started on a peaceful note with thousands standing in solidarity with other Black Lives Matter protests. But soon, things took a more violent turn. Police say that protesters sent rocks, bottles, and explosives raining down on officers. They responded with force of their own in the form of flash grenades and pepper spray. Laura McQuillan tracking the story for us all morning. Laura, what can you tell us?
Yeah, John, police say there were at least 45 arrests up until 10 p.m. last night, but things continued into the night, so we're waiting to hear if there may have been more people taken into custody after what you saw just there. Also, 21 police officers injured in that. We don't know any numbers on how many protesters might also have been injured. But as you mentioned, this did begin as a peaceful march in solidarity with those protesters in Portland who have been railing against the federal intervention with these tactical teams sent in to Portland at the Trump administration's really push, because they say that local leaders, local law enforcement in Portland are not taking things seriously enough when it comes to quelling unrest. So that's some of what you saw in Seattle last night. Police said they did not use tear gas, but rather they used flash grenades and pepper spray. And protesters were, as you see there, they set a youth detention facility under construction on fire in part. A Starbucks very badly damaged. Other damage elsewhere, rocks, bricks and explosives, police say, were thrown at officers. All of this unfolding throughout the evening, and now we are hearing from the protesters they do plan to stage another protest today, in part because federal officers had now been sent into Seattle as well. They are on standby there, but the threat from the Trump administration is that if things become more heated in Seattle, like what we saw last night, those federal agents could intervene there as well.
Laura, you mentioned Portland, and we saw more unrest there last night. What do we know about that?
Yeah, an update on that for you, John, just from Portland Police a short time ago, saying there were several arrests last night. They haven't given numbers as yet, but they say that there was a lot of unrest in the city. You can see some of it there. What police have said is that objects were thrown at police. Protesters blocked streets, which was disrupting ambulance flow through the city. They lit fires, but most of it was targeted at that federal courthouse that has been really the site of so many protests there in recent weeks. That is where federal agents have been deployed. It is a federal courthouse, and clashes last night with protesters once again trying to bring down a fence that has been erected around the courthouse to keep them at bay. The Portland police saying that protesters in fact did manage that last night by attaching a chain and having a great number of people pull down a section of the fence as they had a standoff with officers. You see tear gas was used in that city. In recent weeks there have been some 60 arrests by federal agents in Portland, and the message we heard yesterday from one top official in Portland was that if protesters will stop pulling down that fence around the courthouse, then perhaps those federal agents wouldn't be needed. Here's what he said.
It'll be dictated by the peacefulness of the protests. If DHS and the U.S. Marshal Service deem that the courthouse can stand and can have integrity and is not subject to damage or attack, then the officers will go home.
So that was the scene in just 2 US cities last night, John, but many others also with protests, some of them violent. All of this sparked by George Floyd's death, of course. The Black Lives Matter movement picking up steam once again, it appears, with that threat of federal intervention hanging over it.
Thanks for this, Laura.